My phone buzzed at 7:14 inches the morning, right as I was pulling into the job site parking lot. I figured it was a foreman calling about the concrete delivery running late again. I almost didn't pick up. I almost just let it go to voicemail and kept walking toward the trailer. It was my brother. Dad's lawyer just confirmed everything, he said. His voice had that particular tone I hadn't heard since we were kids, that slow, deliberate, calm he used when he knew he had the upper hand. The company is mine, Caleb. I need you to clear out your desk at the office by end of day. I'm coming in tomorrow morning with my own team. I sat in my truck for a moment, engine still running, listening to the sound of workers unloading lumber 200 feet away. My hands were on the steering wheel. I didn't say anything right away. You still there? He asked. I heard you, I said. Good. And I need the master keys and the access codes to the site management system. I'll have Sarah from accounting email you the offboarding paperwork this afternoon. Dad would have wanted this to be professional. He hung up before I could respond. I looked at my phone for a long second. Then I looked at my watch. It was 7:16 a.m. on a Thursday. And in that moment, staring at the time, something clicked into place, something I hadn't thought about in almost 2 years, something my father told me one evening on the porch of his house, just the two of us, when he knew his health was starting to fail, and the words he chose were quiet and very deliberate. I had exactly 72 hours. Hi, I'm Caleb Merritt. I'm 31 years old, and for the past 6 years, I've been the one running Merritt & Sons Construction. The company my father, Raymond Merritt, built from a single flatbed truck and a borrowed nail gun in 1987. We do commercial builds now, mostly mid-size contracts in the Pacific Northwest, good crews, solid reputation, about $6 million in total assets between the equipment, the contracts, and the real property the company holds. My brother Jordan is 4 years older than me. He moved to Phoenix when he was 26 to pursue what he called investment opportunities, which mostly meant he spent a decade doing very little and calling my father twice a year on holidays. I was the one who showed up every morning. I was the one who learned every position from the ground up because my dad believed you didn't earn the right to lead people until you understood what they carried. I drove the delivery truck. I pulled permits. I was on my knees helping pour footings when we were understaffed and behind schedule. I was there. My father passed 7 weeks ago. Pancreatic cancer, diagnosed in February, gone by April. There wasn't enough time to say everything we should have said, but there was enough time that he said some things I didn't fully understand until my phone rang at 7:14 that Thursday morning. Jordan showed up at the funeral in a pressed suit that still had the dry cleaning tag tucked inside the collar. He cried, in a way that I noticed looked better from certain angles. Then he stayed 3 days and spent most of that time on the phone in the driveway. I didn't think much of it then. I was grieving. I was trying to keep the company running because we had 2 active contracts and 14 employees who had families depending on payroll continuing without interruption. I didn't have time to watch my brother. I should have been watching my brother. The will that his lawyer presented, a document dated 8 months before my father died, listed Jordan as the primary beneficiary of Merritt & Sons. My name appeared once, in a clause about personal property, receiving my father's tools and his old work truck. That was it. 6 years of my life. Every early morning and late night. Every problem I solved before my father even knew it existed. A set of hand tools and a 2009 Ford F-250 with 190,000 miles on it. Jordan's attorney had filed the paperwork quietly and efficiently. By the time I got a copy, the wheels were already in motion. But here's what Jordan didn't know. What his lawyer didn't know. What no one knew except me, my father's personal attorney Walter Grimes, and a sealed envelope sitting in a fireproof lockbox in the back of Walter's office in Tacoma. I drove to the job site, walked through the morning briefing with my foreman like nothing had happened, approved 2 materials invoices, and then I got back in my truck and I called Walter Grimes. He picked up on the second ring. I was wondering when you'd call, Walter said. He wasn't surprised. He had been waiting. Jordan filed this morning, I said. He just called me. He's taking the company. I know, Walter said. I received a courtesy notice from his attorney an hour ago. Walter, I said. The envelope? There was a pause on the other end. Not an uncomfortable one. The kind of pause that happens when something important is about to be said carefully. Your father was very specific, Walter said. He told me you'd know what to ask for and when. He said if Jordan ever filed a claim on the operating entity, not the personal estate, but the company itself, you had 72 hours from the moment of filing to activate the secondary operating agreement. He paused again. Caleb, your father set this up 14 months ago. He came to me alone. He didn't tell your mother? He didn't tell you the whole picture because he said if he told you, you'd try to talk him out of it or feel guilty about it. He just needed you to remember the number. 72 hours. The secondary operating agreement was something my father had constructed with Walter over several quiet months while he was still healthy enough to think clearly but already beginning to understand that his time had a shape to it. It was a separate legal layer beneath the main company, a silent managing partner arrangement, drawn up and notarized, naming me as the sole operating authority of Merritt and Sons in the event that ownership of the company was ever disputed through the estate. The agreement didn't override the will. It didn't need to. It operated parallel to it, through the company's own articles of organization, which my father had amended quietly and correctly and in complete accordance with state law. If I filed the activation documents within 72 hours of a contested claim, the company's operational control transferred to me fully and completely while the estate dispute moved through probate, which could take months, possibly longer. And operational control meant everything: contracts, accounts, payroll authority, equipment, site access. My father hadn't left me the company through the will because he knew Jordan would contest it, delay it, tie it up in court for 2 years while the business collapsed and the employees scattered. So instead, he had done something cleaner. He had left me the ability to run it. I spent the next 4 hours in Walter's office. We filed the activation documents through the proper channels, notified the state, and sent formal written notice to Jordan's attorney. By 1:30 the afternoon, the secondary operating agreement was on record. By 2:15, Jordan's attorney had responded with what I can only describe as a very loud and very expensive email. By 3, I was already back at the job site, approving the next day's schedule with my foreman, because Merritt and Sons had concrete to pour and we were not stopping for anyone. Jordan called me 6 times between 3 and 5. I didn't answer. He showed up at the office the next morning anyway, just like he said he would. His attorney was with him, and there was another man I didn't recognize carrying a box as if he planned to start moving things. I was already there. I had been there since 6:30. I was sitting at my father's old desk, which I had never moved to a different office because I liked being close to the window where he used to watch the crew trucks leave in the mornings. Jordan stopped in the doorway when he saw me. "What are you doing?" he said. "Working," I said. "We've got a framing inspection at the Covington site at 10. His attorney started to speak and I held up one hand, not rudely, just clearly. "Your firm should have received the filing documents yesterday afternoon," I said. "If there are questions, Walter Grimes is the right contact. I'm not in a position to discuss company operations with anyone other than authorized personnel, and as of yesterday at 1:30, that's a short list." Jordan looked at me like he was trying to figure out whether I was bluffing. That particular expression, eyes slightly narrowed, jaw tight, calculating I had seen it our whole lives. He used to do it in card games when he was trying to decide if he could run a bluff past me. He never could. "You can't do this," he said. I looked at him calmly. "I didn't do anything, Jordan. Dad did." He left. His attorney left. The man with the box left without unpacking a single thing. What followed over the next several weeks was not comfortable or simple. I want to be honest about that because the truth of these situations is never a clean line. Jordan hired aggressive attorneys and they made aggressive arguments. They challenged the secondary agreement's validity. They questioned Walter's role. They filed motions. There were hearings. There were phone calls from relatives who had only heard Jordan's version of events and wanted me to just be reasonable and remember this is family. My mother, to her credit, stayed out of it entirely. She had known, I think, for a long time which son actually ran the company, and she told me once, quietly, over coffee at her kitchen table, that she trusted me and that she believed my father had done what was right. That meant more to me than any legal document. The probate judge assigned to the estate dispute was a careful, unhurried woman named Judge Patricia Holloway. She reviewed the filing timeline, the notarization dates, the company's amended articles of organization, and Walter's testimony. She reviewed the original will and its dating history. She asked pointed questions about the sequence of events. And at the end of it, she ruled that the secondary operating agreement was valid, properly executed, and enforceable, and that operational control of Merritt and Sons construction would remain with me while the broader estate matters continued through standard probate process. Jordan's attorney filed an immediate appeal. It didn't hold. 2 months later, it was denied. What I discovered during those months, as the financial records were reviewed in detail, was something I hadn't fully known. Jordan had spoken to my father's accountant separately, 4 months before my father died, asking questions about how assets were structured and whether the company could be liquidated quickly after the estate settled. He had already been in contact with a commercial real estate developer who was interested in acquiring the company's equipment and dissolving the business. He had been planning to sell Merritt and Sons before my father was even gone. 14 employees. My foreman Tommy, who had worked for my father for 19 years. The project managers, the crew leads, the young guys who were just getting their footing in the trade. Jordan's plan would have eliminated every one of them for a check he could have deposited in Phoenix. I never said any of that publicly. I didn't need to. The records were part of the legal proceedings and they were visible to anyone who looked. When the media picked up the story, a local business publication ran a piece about the probate dispute. The headline was about the family company surviving a contested estate. Not about me. I was quoted once, briefly, saying only that my father built something worth protecting and that I intended to protect it. Jordan gave a longer interview in which he said several things I found easy to let go. The week the final probate order was signed, formally confirming the operating agreement and closing the challenge, I drove out to the property on the east side of the county where my father had once told me he wanted to build something. It was a piece of land the company had held for years, originally purchased for a commercial project that never materialized. Just flat open ground with a view of the Cascades on a clear day. My father used to drive out there sometimes when he needed to think. I sat on the hood of my truck for a long time and looked at that view. Then I called Tommy. "How do you feel about building a training center?" I asked. He was quiet for a moment. "What kind?" "The kind that teaches young people the trade," I said. "Real skills? Paid apprenticeships? Kids who can't afford a 4-year degree but can build something that lasts." Tommy was quiet again. When he spoke, his voice was careful in the way it gets when he's trying not to let on that something hit him. "Your dad used to talk about something like that," he said. "I know," I said. "I was there." We broke ground 4 months later. The Raymond Merritt Trades Training Center. The first cohort of apprentices started the following spring, 12 people, mostly in their early 20s, from families that knew exactly what it meant to work with their hands because there was no other option. We covered their tools, their safety gear, their certification fees. We paid them a wage while they trained. We hired 8 of them directly into the company at the end of the program. The local news covered the opening. The story was about the apprentices, which was exactly how I wanted it. Jordan did not attend. About 3 months after the training center opened, I got a letter forwarded from the company's main address. No return address. The handwriting on the envelope was my brother's. I recognized it from years of birthday cards where he wrote his name in that particular slanted way and nothing else. Inside was a single page. I read it once, standing next to my truck in the company parking lot at the end of a long Thursday. He wrote that he had not understood what the company meant to the people inside it until he saw the news coverage of the training center. He wrote that he thought he had been owed something and that he understood now that he had confused being family with having contributed. He wrote that he was sorry. Not to me specifically. Just sorry. The word sat in the middle of a sentence without a direct object, which felt accurate. I folded the letter. I put it in the pocket of my work jacket and I finished walking to my truck. I drove home to the house I had rented on the north side of town, the modest one I had moved into the year before when I finally felt like I had something stable enough to stop renting month to month. I made dinner. I sat on the back porch in the evening quiet with the kind of stillness that takes years to earn. Later that night I took the letter out and I read it one more time. Then I put it in the fire pit in the backyard, the old stone one that had been there when I moved in, and I lit it with a long match. I watched it catch and curl and go. Not out of anger. I want to be clear about that. Not out of any desire to be rid of him or to mark the end of something dramatically. I burned it because I had already read it, already received it, already understood what it cost him to write it. And because carrying it had no purpose now, the chapter was done. The business was intact. The employees still had jobs and health insurance and a foreman who showed up on time every morning because he had been doing it for 19 years and that was simply who he was. My father built something worth protecting. I protected it. That was the whole story. Not loud, not cinematic, not the kind of thing that makes a great speech. Just steady. Just true. The kind of thing that lives in the details in a payroll that clears on schedule every Friday, in a crew that knows their lead has their back, in 12 young people, learning a trade that will feed their families for the rest of their working lives. Some things get won in courtrooms. Some get won in the long quiet before anyone else arrives at the job site, when it's just you and the sound of your boots on gravel and the knowledge that the work in front of you is real and it matters and you are exactly where you're supposed to be. I still drive my father's old truck sometimes. Not for any practical reason. The thing drinks gas and the heat on the driver's side takes 10 minutes to kick in. I drive it because it handles the way I remember, and because the back seat has a coffee stain from a thermos that spilled on a drive to a job site in 2019, and because some objects carry a person in them long after the person is gone. My father is in that truck. In the weight of the steering wheel and the particular rattle of the tailgate and the way the seat sits just slightly too far back for my height because he was taller than me and I've never adjusted it. I don't plan to.